Mercedes-Benz resisted the urge to make the ML midsize SUV a 7-passenger vehicle when they came up with the second generation just a couple of years ago. That's because they have this, the GL, not to be confused with the G-Wagon, which is that big box on wheels. No, this is an all-new 7-passenger full-size SUV for a family that's outgrown the ML but still wants to stay in the Mercedes family. I might even argue that this is a better-looking vehicle than the ML, with a more masculine stance. The GL class is built in the USA alongside the ML class and the R class, and shares components of both. The GL is sold with a V8 gasoline engine called the GL450, and the one we have here is called the GL320 CDI, featuring a V6 diesel engine. Now, what's great about a diesel engine is they produce a lot of torque, and torque is what you need to move a big vehicle like this GL away from the line. You can do that by using a V6 diesel instead of a V8 gasoline engine, and a V6 diesel will produce less CO2. More on all of this in a second. Unlike the G-Wagon, which is all business and very truck-like, this is a unibody design, which means it's big and bold, it has a more sophisticated ride, and definitely a more sophisticated look. Well, for those of you who watch driving television regularly, you know I always advocate getting backup sensors if you can afford it, because if you have a big SUV like this or a minivan, it first of all saves the bumper, and it also makes it a lot safer if you have kids. The nice thing, the GL from Mercedes has backup sensors as standard equipment. Now, the liftgate, you can either lift the handle under the chrome trim here or hit the button on the key fob, and it's automatic. That's pretty slick. Plus, there's a button here when you want to lower it. Now, we've got all 3 rows of seats up. Now, typically when you get a vehicle with this kind of configuration, the space behind the 3rd row of seats is minuscule or not much at all. It's fairly sizable with the GL, plus you get extra storage underneath with a spare tire. Now, if you own a vehicle like this, you're probably not going to be using the 3rd row of seats all the time. It's for occasional use, and you don't want to have to do a lot of work lifting them and raising them. So, Mercedes has come up with a great solution. All you have to do is hit the buttons on the side pillar here, and the seats do all the work. There's a second set of switches just inside the back door, so the seats can be activated without having to open the rear hatch. Now, that's pretty slick. To access the 3rd row, the passenger side 2nd row of seats flip forward, but the driver's side 2nd row seats don't. All seats can be folded flat for ultimate cargo capacity. We found a problem with the backup sensors. The alarm that goes off just before you hit something only comes on inches before impact. If you have the radio going and you're singing along, you're never going to hear the alarm. Look what happened to our director. Well, for anybody that's interested in a full-size SUV, what are you really looking for? Space. And the great thing about the GL is the 3rd row of seats are actually quite livable for adults. They're not just for kids. And the 2nd row of seats, well, they're huge. The dash is almost identical to the ML with large round air vents, flashes of chrome, high-quality vinyls and plastics. I especially like the baseball stitching on the dash. It really is fitting of a vehicle of this price. There are a few things I think are great, like the sunroof, the large useful cup holders, and the electronic shifter on the steering column. But there are also a few things that could be improved, like the position of the turn signal. It isn't in a natural position. Plus, the buttons on the steering wheel can scroll through windows on the dash, but if you want to use the same buttons to change the radio station, you have to find the radio window first. It's all just a little bit too busy. Plus, the radio display doesn't show all the radio presets unless you select a menu button. Well, what you would expect from a vehicle of this price, and especially a Mercedes-Benz, all the airbags are standard equipment. You know, those Europeans are onto something. Almost 60% of all the vehicles sold in Europe are running on diesel. That's because they're 20 to 30% more efficient than a gasoline engine, plus they produce less CO2. The biggest deterrent for North Americans buying a diesel vehicle is the image they have of the noisy, smelling vehicles that were sold here during the gas shortage in the 70s. Now, back in the day, those old diesels, you could hear them coming blocks away. Now, the window's down, and you can't really even hear the diesel engine, You put the window up, you turn the radio on like you typically would be driving around, and you have no idea this is a diesel. The numbers are good, very good. This V6 turbo diesel has 398 pound-feet of torque compared to just 339 pound-feet of torque in the V8 gasoline engine. Remember that torque is what gets a vehicle up and going, so even though this is a V6, it pulls easily when asked. The other benefit is a diesel is efficient at all speeds, so if you drive in stop-and-go traffic or on long highway runs, you save the same percentage of fuel compared to a gasoline motor. The biggest problem with diesel technology in North America has been the fact we had terrible quality diesel. That changed in 2006 when they brought out a low sulfur diesel that enabled manufacturers like Mercedes to bring in their cleaner diesel engines. That's just the beginning. Typically a diesel engine produces less CO2 but more nitrous oxides. Well, that's really going to change when they bring their Blue Tech technology to their entire lineup of vehicles. Currently it's only sold in the E-Class Mercedes. When they have to bring that vehicle to market to meet the 2009 California emission standards, these vehicles will be able to produce less CO2, get great mileage, produce the same nitrous oxide as a gasoline car, and get better mileage than a hybrid. That might be why hybrid vehicles have been a tough sell in Europe. Okay, enough about all this diesel technology. How does the GL class ride? Well, first of all, the vehicle is riding along on air springs, a pneumatic system that really gives a comfortable ride, what you'd expect from a Mercedes-Benz. The steering is fairly light. You drive this big truck around and it's easy to maneuver. You can see the corners of it nicely. It doesn't feel as big as it is. The brakes feel substantial as well. Of course, safety features from Mercedes like electronic stability program and traction control are all included. Well, having a chance to drive the GL class back-to-back with the ML class, I got to tell you, I like the ride of the GL just a little bit better. Maybe it's because I like a bigger, more substantial vehicle. The ML, in my opinion, is just a little bit too car-like for my taste. What I love about Mercedes is the fact they're bringing these diesel engines to market. Well, if you want a vehicle that's powerful, more efficient, and pollutes less, a diesel is the way to go. And when Mercedes has that Blue Tech technology in all their vehicles, you can be even greener. And now for the greenhouse gas burning question. We averaged 11.1 liters per 100 kilometers. That comes out to 25 miles per imperial gallon in mixed city and highway driving.